If you are a burnt out and emotionally exhausted nurse, OT, PT, pharmacist, doctor, or any other healthcare professional, then this video is for you. I created this podcast to help people like you find alternative career paths away from clinical work. I remember when I was a doctor, I just felt really undervalued all the time. There was so much administration and the way things were done weren't always the most efficient, but they were done because that's the way that they were always done. I tried everything and couldn't make myself want to stay in medicine, and ultimately came to the realization that I wanted out. So it was definitely a scary time for me. I really felt stuck in my role. Leaving medicine, the career that I had worked so hard for, didn't feel like a real option until I had connected with others who had made similar transitions and then realized it was totally doable. So that's why I made this video. If you're in the same position I was and thinking about what's next for your career, I'm going to be walking through my 5-step process that I used to land my healthcare consulting job. This is literally the video I wished I had 7 years ago when I committed to leaving medicine. So let's get into it. I call this the PivotMD Pyramid. It's really just the 5 steps that I've been using to help others. So step 1 here is leaving your role. And there's this really nice flow chart, which Steve Bartlett developed a few years ago on when to quit something. And this is what it looks like. And when I saw this for the first time, I thought it really resonated with me on how I came to my own decision about leaving medicine. It starts off with, are you thinking about quitting? And if you're watching this video, then I'm going to assume that's a yes. And then it gets into the why are you thinking about quitting? Okay, so he boils it down into 2 categories. Number 1, it's just hard. And number 2, it just sucks. Okay, and I think this is an important distinction for you to make and really try to identify the reason why you want to quit. If it's hard, is the challenge worth the reward? Is helping the patient in front of you worth it? If it is, don't quit. If it isn't, then quit. And then going on the right-hand side there of it sucks, can you make it not suck? Can you make the workplace more enjoyable? Find a team which you like better. Find a role which you like better. If not, then quit. But if you can, is the effort to make it not suck worth it? And so I actually found this framework really helpful. And again, I do want to stress the importance of navigating your own feelings and self-reflecting a little bit on why you feel unhappy at your current role. Now, this process is going to help you identify the key issues you have in this current role and help shape what you want to look for in your next potential job. Okay, so for me, in my personal context, I was on that right-hand side of the framework where it sucks. I was getting really frustrated with the system, how things were getting done. There are so many things that didn't make sense to me, and things could be way more efficient, but the effort to try and push through and make it not suck would not have been worth it for me. And so that is what ultimately led me to decide to quit and leave medicine. I found through that process that I wanted something that would be targeted more upstream in the patient pathway and to really change the way in which things are done in the system, to impact healthcare in a broader way. And that's exactly what I found in consulting. So that really proved to be the foundation and basis for which I started to explore other career paths. Some common questions that I normally get with this step 1 is, should I quit first or find a consulting job while still working? You should definitely keep your current job for as long as you can. You can find a consulting job while still working. This is totally doable. I would not quit first and then be stuck with nothing. Will leaving affect my license or ability to go back to healthcare later? The answer to that is no. As long as you're keeping up with your credentials or with your CME credits, there shouldn't be a problem about you ever going back to clinical practice. If you feel that you just need a bit of a break and you just wanted to explore something else, that is also totally fine. Another common question I get is, how do I deal with guilt or fear of quote unquote abandoning patient care? And to this, I say that you end up helping patients in a different way. Again, by tackling more of the system versus individual patient problems, tweaking their meds, versus, maybe changing the way in which discharges are done or improving access and flow within a hospital. Okay, so just a different scale of help, which is the key difference here. Okay, quick pause from the video here. I wanted to highlight a book which I wrote. It's called Beyond the Bedside, and it basically explains my transition from being a doctor to healthcare consulting. I describe a lot of the different nuances in decision making and outline some of the things that I found along the way. I even go to my first year as a healthcare consultant and like what that experience was all about. So if you're in a similar position, feel free to go check it out. It's something that I would have loved to read when I first started out 7 years ago, thinking about leaving medicine. So the link is down below, and go check it out. Okay, so that's kind of like step one, leaving your current role. Step two then is what I call do your research. Okay, so now that you've reflected and thought about why you want to leave your clinical role, it's time to figure out what to transition into. Now, this is going to blow your mind. There's actually so many options out there. Everything from pharmaceuticals to government to public policy to healthcare startups to some form of entrepreneurship and way, way more. I feel like once you're in healthcare, you feel like you're in this bubble and you have no idea what is happening in the outside world, or at least that's how I felt when I was first committed to leaving medicine. But, trust me and the others who have gone ahead of me, there are definitely options out there if you do decide to leave your clinical work. The thing is that you've got to do the work to find out more about these options. Okay, this step is all about understanding what interests you the most and learning everything about it. From understanding the day-to-day work to the typical entry job postings to career advancements and what other key factors are there for you, if it's more remote or if it's hybrid or if it's in person, stuff like that, vacation time as well. All of this is what you have to research and learn about anything that kind of excites you. So as a result, this step should take the longest to complete. If you're going to switch careers, you want to make sure that it's the one for you that you can see yourself growing in. Get involved in some volunteer or additional work related to that profession to see if you even like it. For example, if you're interested in consulting, then joining some form of quality improvement project in your hospital would be a really, really good thing to be part of. That's an example of the bread and butter work that healthcare consultants do. So again, this is all part of your research. You have to get active. Some common questions that I get here include, which firms hire ex-nurses or other clinical professionals? And I would say most firms are keen on hiring ex-nurses, former PTs, OTs, etc. The value that you bring to a consulting firm should not be undervalued. I'm going to be talking about this later. Just because you don't have an MBA or any other degree does not make you an undesirable. In fact, the fact that you have clinical experience adds credibility to the firm that you are going to be hired for. So I would say, most, if not all, consulting firms would be quite keen on having former clinical professionals. Another question that I usually get here is, do I need an MBA or any other degree to get in? And the answer is no. I made the transition from being a doctor to healthcare consulting directly. I did not do any additional education. I feel like with healthcare consulting or even consulting in general, most of it is just learning on the job anyways. And, obviously you're a bright individual if you've gone through nursing or any other type of healthcare schooling. So no, you do not need an MBA or any other degree to get in. Okay, so that is step 2, all about doing your research. And, once you've landed on what you want to do, this is going to lead into step 3, which is all about getting an interview. Okay, now for the rest of this video, I'm going to assume that you've landed in consulting. especially since you're watching this video, and you have a targeted posting or job that is in your mind and that you really want to land. Okay, so there's really two things that you have to focus on for the step. Number one is networking, and then number two is updating your resume. Okay, so I'm going to start with number one, networking. Now, this is a term which is thrown around a lot. And for me, this is just more than just messaging and adding people on LinkedIn. Okay, I wouldn't consider that networking. Now, if you don't have any connections with family or friends, you've got to physically go where the people are. Where that job, where do healthcare consultants go? Okay, so think conferences, think societies, think NGOs, think other research papers as well. Okay, a 15-minute chat in person is going to be way more effective than a Zoom call or a message on LinkedIn. Okay, so ideally, you have the in-person chat, and then you add them on LinkedIn afterwards and build your network from there. So eventually, your network should grow so that when you apply for that position, everyone on the team already knows you. Okay, so again, really think about, where do healthcare consultants live or go in their spare time or as part of their business development? Okay, it's conferences. It's being active in different societies. It's NGOs. I would ask friends. I would ask friends of friends. I would ask friends of friends of friends, even just to meet them in person. And then you ask them to share one or two additional contacts on their team so that you can continue to get to know them and the company they work for, and then the types of projects that they have and stuff like that, their team culture, etc. Okay, so that is how you network, and that is really effective. Another place where healthcare consultants go is also at schools and universities. So if you have a university close by to you, I would figure out when the career fair is, because a lot of healthcare consulting firms usually send 2 to 3 individuals from their firm to chat with students. And even though you might not be a student, I would sort of see that as a good opportunity to also shake hands and understand what healthcare consulting is all about. So if there is a university close by, I would definitely just shoot them a message, or you can call them, ask when their career fair is, and I'm sure you can get that information and just drop in whenever that's happening. Okay, so that was networking. Number 2 is focusing on your resume. Okay, now you've really got to tailor this to your role. If you're looking to transfer careers, okay, no one is going to care that you've done 50 echoes in the emerge. Okay, that just doesn't matter. You've got to take the lens of the hiring company and think about what they'd be interested in. Okay, what impact did you have on your role? Do you have any related experience to the position you're applying for, etc.? Now, I'm sure there's a bunch of videos already online about how to optimize your resume, especially for healthcare, especially for consulting. So, I won't go into too much depth here, but just think about, the top qualities of a healthcare consultant. Leadership, dealing with ambiguity, problem solving, working with a team, presenting, facilitation, stuff like that, and try to highlight your own experiences and match them up with each of those different qualities. And that's just my general advice on how to update your resume for healthcare consulting. Common questions I normally get here: what experiences from nursing or clinical work actually matter to firms? Again, if you've been part of any quality improvement project at your hospital, or if you've run some sort of charity or volunteer work, or some sort of sponsor, I would say that's usually pretty good. Other things which I've seen also include the number of years that you've actually been a nurse. So, and where exactly you have been. Was it in the emerge? Was it inpatient medical? Was it inpatient surgical? Was it a peri-op nurse? Stuff like that. Because those end up matching against some of the projects which are available at that time, or they would match against what that consulting firm kind of specializes in and focus on as well. So again, this is all about fit, and you want to highlight your clinical experience, but also balance it with, hey, like what is the consulting firm actually looking for on my resume here? Another common question that I get here: how do I network if I don't know anyone in consulting? I kind of just mentioned this before, but I would either go to the student fairs, I would go to conferences, I would go to, I would just like do a quick Google search for the top 4 or 5 consulting firms in your area that you're keen on, and then see what sort of social media posts they have, what sort of conferences have they been to recently. And then I think from there, you'd be able to sort of backtrack and forecast, oh, hey, like I think they're going to go to this conference here, and then just end up I would go to that conference and end up networking in person. So yeah, that's how I would do it. I know it's a bit more time consuming and probably not your quote unquote traditional advice that you would get, but I just feel like a LinkedIn message, especially these days, is just not enough. Yeah, you really need that in-person connection if you truly do not know anyone in consulting, that is. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you followed these steps, okay, and that you've received an interview, okay, you've networked well, you've updated your resume, you got your foot in the door, okay, you've landed your interview. Now it's time to absolutely crush it. And that leads us to step 4, okay, crushing your interview. So consulting interviews usually consist of 2 to 3 rounds. Now this might vary just depending on consulting firm, but the crux of the interview process are case interviews, where you basically have to solve a case within a set amount of time. So basically the interviewer gives you a prompt, and then you have to ask the right questions in order to get more information and develop a recommendation to present it. So this is really a test of your ability to think logically and present your solution in a well thought out manner in front of members of the hiring team. Okay, so ultimately there's 2 things the interviews are looking for. Number 1, would I trust this person, so you, with a client by him or herself? And then number 2, would I want this person, aka you, to be a member of my team? So, those 2 questions are always in the back of any interviewer's minds. And so, while it's nice to get the quote unquote like right answer, it's not always needed in order to pass the case. If you're able to demonstrate an ability to present well, to think logically, you should be just fine. Otherwise, there's the standard behavioral interviews, things like tell me about a time when you had to deal with conflict, tell me about a time where you demonstrated leadership, stuff like that. And then there's also usually a one-on-one interview with one of the partners. I'll say like the key for acing your interview, for actually crushing it, is to practice. Being on the other end of these interviews as an interviewer, like it is just so obvious when you have an interviewee who has not practiced enough. Okay, so for case interviews, you probably need to do at least 50 cases to be somewhat competent at these. Okay, and the rest of the questions are just, they're going to be your standard interview questions. Okay, but again, practice. I'll probably have more videos on this case interview step, but yes, I really cannot stress this enough. Like you've really just got to like do your research, figure out how to do well at these, and then just practice it, because there's no other way to do it. Hey guys, thank you so much for making it this far into the video. I tried to make it as informative as possible without it being too overwhelming. I wanted to take a quick pause and tell you about a limited time offer that I'm going to run through PivotMD. I'm going to be offering one-on-one personalized career coaching services for those interested in making that transition from frontline clinical practice into whatever comes next. I've connected and helped others make similar career paths, and I would love the opportunity to be able to do the same with you. If this is something that you'd be interested in, click on the Calendly link below and you can schedule 15 minutes with me just to see if we'd be a good fit. There's no obligation or commitment. When you schedule those 15 minutes, I'm always happy to connect and chat with others. So if that's something you'd be interested in, click on the link below. All right, let's get back to the video. Okay, so you've landed the interview, you've aced it, you've crushed it. Now you have your offer. Okay, which leads to step 5, and this is all about negotiating your contract. And the thing that I want to say about interviews is that you only need one to say yes, we want you. Okay, it's that's literally all it takes. So even though you might only have had one interview, all you really need is one. Okay, so congrats. Assuming you've gone through the gauntlet and you've won, it's time to negotiate your contract. Okay, so my advice here is that there's always room for negotiation, especially when you start. Okay, so it's much harder to increase your compensation year over year within a consulting firm because you're competing with everyone else for bonuses. It can get political. Things are I'll say, difficult sometimes. So starting off with a higher compensation is always way better. The way that you can do this is just by highlighting the clinical skills that you bring to the table. Don't undervalue your clinical experience. Okay, your frontline clinical experience is the reason for your hire. Okay, it is super valuable for consulting firms. You bring credibility to the clients who are hiring the firm, and you're going to be relied upon once you join the team. So really, don't sell yourself short. There's always room for negotiation in these contracts. I would really push, maybe go back like once or twice at least and see how much they can increase the offer by. But yeah, like definitely do not sell yourself short in what you're bringing to the table. Okay, and that is the PivotMD process. Let me know if you have any questions about what I've said in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.